Faber Residences, one of the most affordable launches left this year, maybe even next year. But what if I told you if you're looking to buy a unit there, you might have to factor for an additional $200,000 into your budget? Because Faber Residences is so far from the MRT that you might get a heat stroke walking there, which is what the $200,000 is for, to buy a car.
And what we see most of the time in disappearance like his is people suffering from heat stroke, dehydration, sometimes even injury.
But there is some saving grace, and I'm not talking about Nan Hua Primary, because if you buy a unit at Faber Residences, you don't have to buy a television. And why do I say that? It's because you're only 20 meters away from your neighbors. You can just watch theirs. Jokes aside, even with its obvious pitfalls, the developments around Faber Residences have proven to be one of the most profitable across the island. Now, the golden question is, can the pros outweigh the cons? We wanted to find the most data-driven way possible to answer this question, which is why I utilized my 10 years of experience to develop our exit strategy framework, a data-backed, back-tested framework that gives us clarity on the exit strategy of a particular project. It also allows us to compare different projects on an apple-to-apple basis, stripping out the emotions from the decision-making process. The base of the framework centers around a deep analysis of the supply around Faber Residences. Now, the selection of which condos to analyze is important, and it shouldn't just be down to proximity. The trick here is to put ourselves in the shoes of our future buyers. If they're looking to purchase a unit in the vicinity, which are the other condos that they will consider, and how does our condo stack up against the rest? So what we've done is to compile all the data of the condominiums around Faber Residences to analyze. And you see over here, we have Clementi Park that by proximity is nowhere close to Faber Residences. But some of the blocks within Clementi Park is within 1 km of Nan Hua. So here's the thing, right? If a buyer is looking to purchase a unit that's within 1 km of Nan Hua, Clementi Park is a competition to Faber Residences. And it also helps in the analysis because Clementi Park is also extremely far from the MRT. So a quick look at the supply over here. I've helped everybody kind of segment them out for the ease of analysis. Okay, so we have a lot of slightly older freehold developments over here highlighted in this beige color, right? Follow that up, especially with the two condos that's right beside Faber Residences, right? Waterfront at Faber and Faber Crest. These are slightly older, 99-year leasehold condos together with Regent Park. That is that small condo right beside, in between TriLink and Park Clementis. And lastly, right, the more recent supply, right, developments like Park Clementis, the TriLink Clavon, Clement Canopy, Park Rivera, Twinview, Whistler Grand, Elta, and Faber Residences. Okay, interesting thing here is that Clavon, Clement Canopy, and Elta is not within 1 km of Nan Hua, right? But I still included them in in the analysis is because they are still located within Clementi, and their price performance is good despite them not being within 1 km of Nan Hua. So now here's the thing, right? I feel that there are some demand in Clementi that doesn't require the 1 km to Nan Hua. They just want to be in Clementi, right? And in this case, Clavon, Elta, and Clement Canopy will then represent competing supply for Faber Residences, and hence their inclusion in the analysis. What interests me more is to analyze which of the condominiums for each bedroom types perform the best. And let's see if we can spot some kind of trend to help us forecast what's likely going to happen for Faber Residences in the future. Let's take a look. So starting us off first at two bidders, sorting out based on average annualized profits per annum. Okay, from highest to lowest. Okay, so we can see over here, for the area, seems like the freehold developments, right, which are highlighted in this color, perform better. Okay, we have the park that performs the best at 6, but the park and Botania that performs the best. Carabel just slightly lesser, slightly lower by 0.1%, doing the best, right? The best performing 99-year leasehold ones are Park Clementis and Clavon, right? Other than that, very, very obvious, the freehold ones outperform the leasehold ones by quite a fair bit. Okay, now moving on to the 3 bidders. If we can rank it over here. Now, once we go to the 3 bidders, then results are a lot more mixed. Okay, we have the best performing one, Clavon, followed by Park Clementis, and then Monterey Park coming in at 7.3%, right? The first representative from the freehold part, right? And then Whistler Grand at 6.8%. So it's dominated by the 99-year leasehold in terms of best performing, most profitable units, okay? What might be a little bit concerning, right, would be Waterfront at Faber, consistently performing the lowest amongst all the peers over there, right? So I get this question a lot, why? Okay, now if you dive in and analyze the supply and the layouts for Waterfront at Faber, there's a lot of loft units over at Waterfront at Faber, right? And traditionally, based on all the other developments, you're looking at developments such as Urban Vista, the Creek, for example, those developments with a lot of loft units, right? And the worst is some got loft, some no loft. You see PSFs going up and down, and traditionally their price performances are horrendous. Okay, so as you can see over here, right, Faber Crest and Waterfront at Faber Crest actually performs better than Waterfront despite it being a little older, and Faber Crest is kind of holding its own against the other freehold developments and newer 99-year developments. So for that, in my opinion, tells us that it's not an issue, right? Waterfront at Faber's underperformance is not down to the location, okay? So that's something that we can kind of take away from here. So for the 3 bidders, as you can see, right, the worst performing ones belong to the older 99-year leasehold, followed by Park Rivera, 100 Trees, and the TriLink. Okay, now moving on, we have over here the average, right? So with this, you can see which ones performs better and performs worse than the average. Now moving on to the 4 bidders, okay, we have over here, again, the best performing ones belong to the 99-year leasehold. We have Clavon and Park Clementis coming out on the top 2, followed by Carabel and Whistler Grand. Subsequently, we have the Infinity and Botania, right? So very interestingly, right, the park that performed so well in the 2 bidders underperformed quite a fair bit for the 4 bidders, right? Even with 8 transactions, they annualized only 4.5%. That is below the average, okay? And 5 bidders again, right, because we have so little transactions to work on, just 2 over at Clavon. However, those average to 8.5% per annum. So really the case for 5 bidders is just no supply in the market at this point in time. Now let's put all that research into our exit strategy framework. For those of you joining us for the first time, please do check out this video where we explain in detail why and how we develop the exit strategy framework. So I'm first going to explain what are the parameters I utilize for the exit strategy framework, right? Starting first off with the price, okay? And this is the per square foot first, right? I've utilized 2,100 PSF. How do I come up with this number? So I can share this sheet that I've done. Again, right, if you like to take a look at this sheet, feel free to drop us a text. Happy to send it over to you. So we already have all the existing launches, right? Those that have been launched, okay? We have their land cost. Over here, this is the HPROP estimated break-even price, okay? We got it from H Property, right? Similarly, now we have the average per square foot sold at launch. Now with that, we are able to calculate the percentage markup from the eventual per square foot sold as a function of the land cost, right? So as we see from here, we have all the answers. We also have the percentage markup based off the HPROP estimated break even, right? And with that, we have the average percentage markup from land cost based on the existing launches sold. and the average markup from each prop estimated break even from the from all these existing launches sold this year. Okay, now with that, I've just utilized all this to times the land cost and also the each prop break even to give us this estimated per square foot, right, based on the average, based on the land cost times the average PSF markup over all the launches this year, and similarly doing that as well for the age prop break even. And so now with that, we can see, right, the percentage hovers around 2000 if we take the PSF land as a gauge, and also 2158 if we utilize the age prop estimated break even as a gauge, right? So which is why I'm utilizing 2100, okay? And with that, we also have the sizing. So I take the per square feet times the size to give us the quantum. Right, next up, average profitability per annum. This is perhaps the most important data point for all of us. And why do I choose to utilize this data point? It's because people always like to ask, how is the demand in that area? Okay, instead of trying to guess and then give very generic answers such as upgraders, first timers, things, so on and so forth, I decided to just utilize percentage annualized profits. Why? Number one, it allows us to compare across different unit types utilizing just one data point. Okay, it also allows us to compare between different developments using one data point. If a particular development has high demand, very naturally the profitability per annum should go up, right? Because the units are faster to sell, take a shorter time to sell. If a development or if an area has lesser demand, very naturally the units take longer time to sell, and owners will then start cutting back on their prices, eating into their profits to move their units, right? So there's no need actually to ask, right, how much demand, how's the demand in the area and whatnot, right? You simply just have to look at what's the average profitability per annum in the area and kind of compare it to your other comparables. Okay, next up we have the current units for sale. Okay, so for the current units for sale, we just go on and take a look at all the different developments. We go into Property Guru, they take a look at all the different developments within our shortlist, right, for our research, and check out what are the 2-bed 2-bath units available for sale over there. Okay, next up is the total supply of units, right? This comes from over here. So these are all the 2-bedders that have been built in all the condos that we are considering in the analysis. And so taking the current units for sale as a function, right, divide by the total supply of units in the area gives us our supply ratio. So the lower the supply ratio, the better. It means there's less units for sale as a function of what were the units built. Okay, and similarly, right, simply taking the average profitability, the supply ratio divide by the average profitability per annum gives us the exit score. This essentially is the demand and supply ratio for the area, and the lower the number, the better. Okay, subsequently we have the average surrounding quantums, median surrounding quantums, and highest surrounding achieved quantum in all of the condos that we are analyzing. Okay, we check the gap between these quantums against this price, right, and then taking up a percentage of it and summing all of them up. Similarly, we do the same for per square foot. Okay, at the end, right, by summing up the gap score between quantums and per square foot gives us the overall gap score. Similarly, the lower the score, the better. The more negative the score, the better. Now, let's start analyzing them. So for the 2-bed 2-bath, right, we have a score of about 70. In general, as long as the score comes down below 100, I'm very, very happy, right? And this is based off the back testing that we have done with the previous batch of supply from the 2018 batch, okay? And so if you'd like to have an idea how the 70% stand as compared to the other developments, we have all of that placed into our other sheet, okay, where we compare the score over here for Faber Residences against all the other launches this year. Okay, so as you can see, 70% actually scores as one of the best compared to the rest, right, due to its high profitability and low supply. Okay, so again, if you like to have a look at this particular sheet, okay, perhaps the most important sheet, right, drop us a text, right, happy to send it over to you, right? But what really attracts me for Faber Residences, it's the gap score. So typically in the OCR and RCR, right, the gap score most of the time is above zero, okay? Primarily because the surrounding supply tends to be not a whole lot more expensive, okay? Typically, they are actually quite a fair bit older and hence cheaper, right? But in and around the Clementi area, we have the benefits of having some of the more highly priced new developments in the area to kind of pull the prices up. And the benefit, if developers were to sell Faber at 2,100 PSF, is that it might potentially be even lower, right? GFA harmonized aside, even lower than some of the resale in that area, right? Let me just jump over to you to take a look at this. If we see two bedders, don't look at Alta, right? That's a brand new development. We come very, very close to Clavon and Park Clementis at 2,100 PSF. For three bedders, okay, you see definitely below Alta, but we come close, actually even lower than Clavon and Park Clementis already. Similarly, for four bedders, lower than Clavon, Park Clementis, also lower than Alta, definitely, yeah. Which is why you get negative gap scores like that, which is very, very hard to come by, and that is perhaps one of the main reasons why people are looking at Faber Residences. Okay, moving on, right? I won't cover all of them, right? If you want, you can pause the video right now and kind of look at them on your own, right? I'm just going to look at the top line over here. Most profitable ones are the 5 bedders for sure, but of course, if you cannot stretch your budget so much, the 3 bedders also perform pretty well at 5.4%, right? In terms of supply, that definitely the 3 bedders have the most, okay? But you don't really have to be afraid of that because the supply ratio, right, only 98 3 bedders for sale, even though there's 4,100 3 bedders being built, right? This as opposed to the River Valley area, okay? So look at our scores for the River Valley area, and if we take a look at the 3 bedders over here, so despite the fact that in the River Valley area, right, we have about only 1,200 3 bedders built in those developments that we have analyzed, there's 175 for sale, giving a supply ratio of 13.7% compared to Clementi, right, the Faber area, right, even though 4,100 3 bedders, only 98 for sale, hence giving them only a 2.4% supply ratio. Now, what does this particular data point tell you, right? First of all, I never want to see the really just compare or analyze based on total supply of units built, because some areas I choose to explore a slightly wider area. So naturally, there is more bedrooms or units being built, right? What I really want to see is how many units are there for sale. Okay, if there's a lower supply ratio, naturally means you can command a higher price, earning higher profits. Take a look at this, right? So with this supply ratio, we can use about 5.4% annualized, right? But if we take a look over here, naturally, right, when the supply ratio comes up, okay, profitability most of the time comes down. Okay, hence giving a poorer exit score, right? The larger the exit score, the poorer the exit score. Some other things to note, comparing the expected entry quantums based on 2,100 PSF as a function of the median entry prices, right? I see a huge gap. I see a decent gap over here for the 2-bed, 2-bath, right? If you can get 2,100 PSF. I also see a good gap for the 3 compact, right? We have about a $400,000 gap to the median surrounding quantums. Even at the premium, right? Because the premium is only 861 square feet, right? So utilizing the GFA harmonization, right? So this is the second GFA harmonized development after Alta in that area, right? A good 334,000 to the median in that area. Almost $1 million of the highest achieved quantum, right? In that area. The highest achieved quantum coming from, I believe, should be Clementi Park, right? That freehold and very, very big lah, right? But you see even Alta have hit 2.4 million. So if you can come in at 1.8, I think it's still very, very good, okay? The even larger premium of 1033 square feet, yep, you can, it's at 2.1 million still. To the median, not much gap anymore, right? But if let's say you compare to Alta, that's averaging out about 2.4, that is still a pretty decent gap in my opinion, right? The gap kind of narrows off once you move into the 4-bedders as compared to the median. But 5-bedder, if you can get at 2,100 PSM from hopefully even lesser than that, excellent gap to the 5-bedders that are being transacted over at Clavon, right? The 5-bedders over at Alta is also starting from $3.8 million, right? So at 3.1, that's something interesting to consider if you're okay with the location. Now, looking very quickly at where Faber Residences stand as compared to the other launches. So for the 2-bedders, we have seen it earlier. The exit score, Tampines West, that's likely coming up next year, will have a better exit score than Faber. But other than that, it scores pretty well, very close to Sky at Holland. Okay. In terms of gap score, also pretty good, right? We have a -71. That is perhaps the best gap score amongst all the developments. Okay, for 3-bedders, right? 3-bedders, however, we are not the best, right? The best belongs to Penrith 3 Compact, followed by Penrith 3 Premium. The Sky Street Compact does pretty well also in terms of the compact, and then comes Faber Residences, of course. Tampines West, again, coming up next year, also have a very good exit score, right? So exit score in terms of the 3-bedder, I feel is decent, right? Better than the River Valley ones lah, huh? Over in terms of gap score at -91, it's actually surprisingly better than the River Valley gap scores, right? But lose out to Sky's gap score, but negative at a very nice balance of a 45% exit score and a -91% gap score. I believe this has kind of the best balance among all the other launches, okay? And for 4-bedders, right, we have 66% losing out to Alta and Penrith's exit score, and also losing out to Tampines West exit score. In terms of gap score, however, it's not the best at -6 because the River Valley ones have a much better gap score. Sky also have a better gap score, right? But other than that, if you're looking at the OCR kind of developments, ASEA OCR kind of developments, Faber's -6% is pretty decent, right? Now, if you'd like to take a look at this sheet itself, because this is still pretty general, some of the things we have not yet edited. If you want to take a look at this sheet, feel free to drop us a text. Happy to share it with you. So if you've enjoyed the video and have benefited in some way or another, we'll be really thankful if you could hit that like and subscribe button, because it'll help out the channel a ton. So of course, if you totally don't understand what I just mentioned and you'd like to have a very quick summary or direct answer on if one is better for you or not, same thing, just drop us a text. We'll be happy to help you out. Right? So now that we have the quantitative analysis out of the way, here are some of the things that you want to consider as part of the qualitative analysis, okay? So things like, you know, if you're comparing between different developments, the size of the development, whether or not one development has more transformation than another development, any new plots in and around the area to help you kind of pull out the prices. So for transformation and new plots over at Faber, this is something that we don't really have a lot of. I know some people will tell you about the new MRT station coming up at Ulu Pandan. I'm gonna just be very honest, there's no way anybody is walking there. There's no shelter, it's a fully unsheltered walk anywhere there. Yeah, you're better off kind of taking the bus at the bus stop right below Faber Residences along the AYE. You then also want to compare the age of the developments between one another, the rental yield if you're looking for investment, right? I like to tell people you look at rental yield as the best way to kind of appleize the location, even if you're not a investor, right? So the first way, right, is to utilize what we highlighted earlier, right? The average profitability per annum to tell you whether one area is more investable than another area. The other one you can do its rental yield, because this is what the tenants are telling you they are willing to pay for a particular area, okay? And this is how you can utilize one data point to kind of compare across different developments. So if your own stay, right, the typical stuff, right, school, MRT, amenities, like what I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at amenities, Faber Residences wouldn't be ranking too favorably, okay? But it does, however, have a school, okay? Now, I'm going to focus a little bit more of portfolio optimization because that is kind of what we do best for our clients. So how do you then reconcile different holding periods between the different developments? Okay, so if you ask me, Faber Residences holding period, you potentially might have to hold a little bit longer, simply because of its inaccessible location. The pool of buyers may potentially be a little bit lower, but with a good entry price, you'll still be able to yield your profits. You just need to be a little bit more patient when you sell. Okay, next up, portfolio sizing, right? How big should you be buying? If at particular entry price, for example, $3.1 million for the 5-bedder, is there a decent enough market for you to sell to, right? So these are the kind of things that we come into deep discussions with our clients. More importantly, Rule 58, this is perhaps the most important thing to think about, right? Opportunity cost, right? As with most sale and purchases, it's not so much whether or not you'll make money, right? Across the different developments, most likely, right? With a sufficient holding period, you will make money, right? But what's the opportunity cost of buying one development over another development? A unit that is perhaps a little bit bigger, right? For example, you can get a slightly larger unit here at Faber Residences, 4-bedder, okay? 2.3 million versus, let's say you want to buy Penreef, 3-bedder, right? For thereabouts the same price, maybe even a 3 compact for the same price. So what's the opportunity cost of choosing one over another, right? Because Faber, naturally, you may take a little bit longer to sell. Penreef, faster to sell. Faber, lower rental yield. Penreef, slightly higher rentals that you can get there. So now what is the opportunity cost, right? So these are some of the things that you want to consider in terms of your portfolio optimization. Similarly, exit timing, okay? Then now once you have boiled down into the particular development, how do you then select within the development itself? This comes to balloting day strategy, okay? So other than these other quantitative analysis to think about, I'm going to put it up onto the screen, kind of our scope of services for our clients, okay? Now, moving on to the 3 things we like and don't quite like about Faber Residences. Starting first off with the 3 things we like. And on point number 1, it's the land cost. So as you can see from here, right, Faber Residences rank in terms of land cost is the 3rd cheapest in the balance launches, right, yet to be launched, with Tengah obviously over at Tengah being cheaper, and the Sand over at the Souza Avenue being cheaper, right? But if you are looking at anything that is within 1 km of a good primary school, it's by far the cheapest, okay? The next one with a good primary school in its vicinity, I believe would have to be Lakeside Drive with Rulang Primary, and the one likely will come out at 2,588 per square feet. Other than that would be then Thomson View, that is likely going to touch 2007, right? Even comparing those units that have been launched, right? Springleaf Residences actually had a higher per square feet per plot ratio than Faber Residences, right? And they average into 2,175. So this, considering it's also the same developer, is perhaps your best gauge on where the developers will likely launch Faber Residences at, right? So one of the good things is that Faber Residences is launching into quite a fair bit of competition together with Penreef, Sky, at Holland and also the Sand. So on that note, I think the developers probably wouldn't be overly aggressive with their pricing. And also the fact that, you know, there's obviously some inherent objections with regards to its location that, you know, the developers will be a little bit cautious about, right? So with this, fingers crossed, hopefully the developers will launch closer to the 2,100 PSF range, and with that, I think the demand will be pretty decent. However, if they price it too aggressively, I do think there are better alternatives to think about. And I've given you the clue earlier on in the video. Now, onto the second thing we like about Faber Residences, its exit score. So as you can see, Faber Residences has a really good exit score across all unit types, perhaps the most consistently good exit score that we have seen amongst all the developments that we have reviewed so far. Now, what does the exit score tell you? The exit score tells you that it is located in an area with a very good supply-demand dynamic, okay? And let's see how it fares against the other new developments, okay? So as you can see over here, for the two-bedders, it ranks very favorably, similar in score to Sky, perhaps only losing to Tampines West. Okay, and you can see even compared to Elta, that's also located in Clementi, it has a better exit score. It also beats out Penrith's two-bedder in terms of exit score, being more profitable, okay, and having less number of units for sale. As for the three-bedders, okay, it's not the best amongst the three-bedders, right? We have Tampines West that's better, Sky and Penrith that is better, but it's still not too bad, right? At 45%, average profitability of above 5%, only losing out to Elta, but still better in terms of profitability compared to Penrith, Sky, Tampines West, and obviously all the other ones over at River Valley. Okay, and lastly, for the four-bedders, the four-bedder at 66% loses out to Upper House, Elta, Penrith, and Tampines West, but beats all the River Valley ones and also the Sky's four-bedder. And on to the third and last thing we like about Faber Residences, the pretty obvious one, it's its proximity to Nan Hua Primary. So again, coming back to profitability, it's very, very rare to see developments with the lowest is 4.5%, and for 3, 4, 5 bedders all exceeding 5% across a multitude, right? And this is analyzing through almost 20 different developments. You still average out into above 4% percentage annualized returns. That is very, very good. And with a lot of them also not having fantastic amenities and accessibility, I would say Nan Hua Primary must have had a huge part to play in the profitability of these condominiums. And moving on to the three things we don't quite like about Faber Residences. On the first point, perhaps the most obvious point of all, is its distance to MRT and the lack of amenities. Obviously, if you're looking for own stay, this might be a deal breaker for you, but perhaps let me explain it from the perspective of how it might affect your exit strategy. Okay, so first point is that it will potentially affect the rental yield. Okay, because tenants, right, they tend to like amenities and like distance to MRT, right? So like for like a two-bedder over at Faber and a two-bedder, for example, at Penrith or Sky, the Faber one will likely have lower rental yield. So it's just something that you have put into mind. Of course, if you're looking to exit to an investor, that may also impact, right, the potential prices you're going to fetch. The second point is the one that I want to share a little bit more about, okay? And I'm going to give you the case study of the Trevor, okay? So for those of you who haven't heard of the Trevor before, it's located at Potong Pasir. I'll probably put the location onto the screen. So the Trevor was launched perhaps in the same period as Park Colonial and Woodleigh Residences. They are located within one MRT stop from one another. The Trevor is within 1 km of St. Andrews and also Peichin, a good school. Park Colonial, on the other hand, and Woodleigh Residences is located within 1 km of also St. Andrews and also Maris Stella Primary. So in terms of schools, I think they are pretty similar, right? Maris Stella is also quite popular, Beijing is also quite popular, and then St. Andrews the same for both, right? So if you're comparing them between schools, I would say they are on par. The difference comes with their distance to the MRT. Park Colonial and Woodley Residences, as you know, are right beside the MRT. Perhaps I could put that onto the screen to help everybody out. Right beside the MRT, with Woodley being on top of the MRT and integrated development. Fast forward to today, right? In terms of price performance, you see that Woodley Residences and Park Colonial, they can average almost 7 to 8% percentage annualized gains on average. All the owners experience about more than a 400 PSF increase in terms of their price. Trevor, on the other hand, generally, on average, the owners experience a 300 PSF increase in terms of price. And their percentage annualized returns lose Park Colonial and Woodley Residences by about 1 to 2%. And the reason why is because actually a lot of people don't or forgot that there was even this development called the Trevor. Right? During the developer launch, yes, the developer can invest a lot of money in terms of marketing and whatnot, right? But once it comes into the resale market, you need to put yourself in the shoes of how resale buyers look for properties. A lot of the time they search down based on the MRT station. They search first based off, right, which are the condos within close proximity to the MRT. And when you're so far away from the MRT, you might just fall out of the search of these buyers. But is this going to be a deal breaker? The answer is no, because for Trevor's case, right, they still make money. 300 PSF increase is still a decent chunk of change. Now, the thing is that you probably will become laggard in terms of the price performance, right? The rest of the developments have to move first. Those that with better attributes will have to move first, okay? And then subsequently, right, then your price will start to follow suit, right? As we can see from Trevor versus Park Colonial and Woodley Residences. On to the second thing I don't quite like about Faber Residences, it's its site plan. So let's take a look at its site plan over here. If you don't tell me that this is Faber Residences, I might have mistaken it for Treasure at Tampines, with, you know, rows and rows of blocks and then the close block-to-block distance with the narrowest being at 20 meters away from one another. I would expect this particular block to be the cheapest, right? Because this guy has West Sun and this guy has AYE noise, right? So my issue is not so much that it faces the AYE. Actually, that's okay for me. If you've done your research, the Park Clementis highway facing, your Clavon, your Clement Canopy, Whistler Grand Park Rivera highway facing units can still be profitable. As a matter of fact, if they sell them cheap enough, I would actually recommend them as a pretty decent investment purchase. So that's not an issue for me, the highway facing. My issue primarily is because we already have an uphill battle for Faber Residences with its lack of amenities and its distance to MRT. Okay, so even though they might sell it cheap, okay, if had the quality been better, right, in terms of like block-to-block distance. And I'm going to quote that example of Key Residences. Now, Key Residences is also very far in from the MRT, from all the amenities. However, right, the quality of the finish was quite good, right? It's all in one block, right? And there's no the block-to-block distance. There's very, very good privacy, so to speak, right? You either overlook the landed or you overlook into the greenery part, and you know, there was a quality of Key Residences that attracted a certain profile of buyers, right? Those that like serenity, those that like, you know, privacy and whatnot, right? So it's unique selling point, so to speak. If I look at Faber Residences and look at this layout, I struggle to find a unique selling point over here, other than the fact that there is cheap and there's Nan Hua Primary. Now, are those two reasons sufficient enough to help Faber Residences kind of outperform its neighbors? I don't know. On to my third and final point on what I don't quite like about Faber Residences is because it's low rise. So it's not that I need a high floor to enjoy panoramic views and whatnot. It's not because of that, right? Being low rise affects the staging that the developer can do for your particular unit. Let me quote you two examples to explain this case. Okay, the first example that I'm going to show you is Kentridge Hill Residences. Right, so it's similarly only up to 5 stories. So if you see over here for stack 73, right, they on level 3, yeah, or on level 2, you see their purchase price in terms of PSF is 1,600, 1,667, over here is 1,662, 1,674, so increased by about 12 PSF. Coming up 1,687, so again increased by another 13 PSF, right, all the way up to the top floor, right. This one has perhaps a higher ceiling, that's why PSF is lower. But from the lowest to the highest, you only have like about a 20 odd PSF differential. Okay, in terms of quantum, that time upon the purchase, the difference may be 20,000. Okay, the staging that you might potentially get will then come from developer price staging them selling. For example, stack 74, right? 2 years later, right, at a higher PSF, you see over here 1,800 versus the original 1,600. So now this is contingent that the developer doesn't sell out the entire development on launch day and have time to stage up the units later on to a higher price. And you see over here after about 1.5 years, right, they increase the PSF by about 140 PSF. On the flip side, right, I'm going to show you the example of Alta. Okay, so Alta, we can look over here for the 2-bedders that have been sold already, right? Notice right at the bottom, the lowest floor for this 700 square feet 2-bedder, right, the PSF 2282. Okay, in terms of quantum, about 1.6 million. That same unit on the highest floor was sold at 1.95 million. Okay, so the difference, it's about $350,000 in terms of per square foot, almost 500 PSF differential, right? And this is within the same day. This is the exact same unit type. So even if the developer sells out on launch day, you don't need them to kind of stage their prices up later on. Just by level staging, you kind of already are sitting on good profits, assuming you are able to buy it on the lower floor. So now this is something that will not be available for Faber Residences due to their low-rise nature. So what are you banking on? So first of all, you're banking on block-to-block staging, right? You buy a cheaper facing block and hope that they sell another block and another facing at a higher price. But you know, as we know, in terms of developers, when they launch, it's impossible for them to have a, for example, like Alta, right, a 500 PSF difference for the same unit type, and especially for 2-bedders. Right? So that is something that you're not going to get with low-rise development. So now in conclusion, can the pros outweigh the cons for Faber Residences? If you ask me, it's going to come down to price. If you can get something at less than 2,000 PSF, I think it's still going to be a good deal. The pros can outweigh the cons, right? You're still going to get a good developer in a location that traditionally has done well with a good school. But if prices start crossing 2,100, 2,150 per square feet, and you come in terms of price very, very close to your surrounding neighbors that might be freehold, for example, the park, those kind of condos, or your 99-year leasehold ones, such as Park Clementis, Whistler Grand, for example, then you got to be careful and you perhaps might want to consider your alternatives. Okay, and also, right, if you are limited by budget, again, right, there may not be that many options available to you. You might end up considering between a 3-bedder compact, for example, over at Faber Residences versus a 2-bedder at Sky or at Penrith, right? For those examples, the answer then is not as clear-cut as it is, okay? You then got to start considering what is your holding period, what's your potential exit, and you know, in terms of the exit timing, is it the most optimal for where you are in your property journey? So if you find all of this too overwhelming and you just can't decide or you cannot understand, don't worry, simply drop us a text. Or you like to take a look at all the research that we have done, the comparisons, all the collaterals that we have for buyers, sellers, and investors. Similarly, just hit us up. Happy to share it with you. And of course, Faber Residences is launching soon. If you like more details for Faber Residences or would like to check out the show flat, similarly, we are able to help you with that. If you've benefited and enjoyed the video, we'll be really thankful if you could hit that like and subscribe button as you help out the channel a ton. And lastly, before we go, if you resonate with our systematic and data-driven approach to portfolio planning and property purchases, and we'd like to hear what we have to share, feel free to drop us a text. If not, till next time, bye-bye.